A discussion of private housing versus public housing initiative, also known as Places for People. We're going to talk a little bit about Park City and what I did up there. We're going to talk about what the city has been doing around town. We're going to talk about what the legislature has been doing, maybe to help them. And then finally, what the federal government is doing with some of their funding, basically. Before I delve into the presentation, I want to give you a little bit of background. My background. I did my first infill house 60 years ago. I was 18, 19-year-old kid, Kansas City, Missouri. My dad, who was a carpenter, bought a vacant lot between two houses. It had weeds on it. It was a typical infill lot, hadn't been taken care of real well. Had built us a new house. He scratched the plans out on a tablet. I took the tablet to my high school drafting teacher, and with his help, I was able to actually create the plans for that first house. Then I had the wonderful experience of driving 16 penny nails, having floor joists and rim joists, nailing them together on a hot summer day. Great experience, and I'll never forget those days. In fact, in those days, I loved being out and sweating. There's nothing like it, basically. You can look back and see where you've been during the day, and there really is no experience like that. From that experience, I went on to college. I spent a stint in the United States Army. My first career job was in 1965. I actually took a job with the National Gypsum Company and moved to Wichita, Kansas, selling building materials. National Gypsum Company was a building material manufacturer. They manufactured walls and ceilings. They did things like drywall, like plaster, insulation. They had a full line of building materials. I spent 8 years with them. I actually learned how to sell a commodity. Gypsum wall boards manufactured by probably 6, 8 competitors, and so I learned firsthand hopefully what I had to do to be able to compete in that kind of a market. I went from there to Masonite Corporations and spent 4 years. What I found working the corporate, I'm going to show you a little bit of my opinion on the corporate. I spent 12 years there. The two corporations that I worked with went through cycles. They would be like Masonite would develop a new product line. They start texturing their products, and the sales would go up. So they did the research and development to build a better mousetrap. Then they get complacent and they'd level off. That point is when they started hiring all of these consultants, MBAs. Master of Business from some of the finest schools around the country, and the business then would start tapering off. And when it started doing this, the board of directors got somewhat concerned about it, and the steps they took, they fired half the sales force, they cut the advertising budget, and they cut the research and development. As the slide continued, they'd finally hit bottom down here. Then they'd come in and they'd fire 3/4 of the home office, and we'd start the whole cycle over again. So this is my experience within the corporate world. And as an aside, in the government world, you never see this. You always see it doesn't make any difference whether Wichita has 20,000 or 12,000. You don't see if you look at the history of the growth of local governmental units, it's always been a spiral up. What actually drove me nuts in the corporate world was the staff, corporate staff, and we had people. The corporate staff were people mostly MBA, a lot of MBAs, no field experience, no experience out in the field at all, and they would come in and they would improve joint cement. we would have a good business going to joint cement, and there are 13 different things that you look for in joint cement, and they'd change it, they'd save 2 pennies a bag, and they'd throw the whole thing off, and they'd ruin our business. So then we'd have to improve back, and it was a continual battle that way. They improved us out of business. They also get the wild idea that on a Friday afternoon, the sales force didn't have anything to do, so we wrote bellwether reports. The bellwether reports were interesting. No one read them, but there isn't anything worse to do to a salesperson than saddle them with paperwork. So the corporate atmosphere drove me nuts. So after 12 years in it, 1965, I quit a great paying job, went cold turkey in the real estate business, and started selling new houses with Pate Construction, Carmen Pate. And he worked infill lots, actually out in Quail Meadows, out east. It was fascinating to watch. I learned a lot from Carmen, because if he got into a problem getting a house sold, he got creative. I never forget that 9265 Lincoln Court, he actually had a jeweler who was interested in it, and so he bought his wife $5,000 worth of jewelry so he could use that as a down payment on this house. So the creative aspects, I picked those up early. And that's what you do when you're in the private sector, if you want to survive. I spent a year in commercial real estate. That's where I really cut my teeth on learning how to make 11,000 and spending 14. That's character building basically, but it's part of the whole process. During that period, the man who owns this building, Colby Sandlin, put on courses called Broker Estate Building, and I consider Colby one of my finest mentors. Colby taught me how you never do anything in the real estate market. First of all, you can't be everything to all people, so you find a niche. Then you become the specialist for that niche, and you learn everything you can about it, and before you make the leap into it. During the process of real estate business, I did some rehabilitation. I saw firsthand how you can take an old house and rehabilitate it, and you create uplift for the neighborhood. Bought one out in the old orchard that had 3 vacant lots. I sold those lots to a builder that created new houses, entry-level houses. This is uplift. This was tremendous things for that in addition to the town west saved the old orchard area, in my personal opinion. So those kind of things. Okay, so let's take a look at the infill. Michael, I may need some help here.
You're all right.
Okay, the Park City story. Well, in the late 80s and early 90s, I was working selling new houses in the Wichita. We did some infill up there. I was working with a builder who saw opportunity there and seized it. And so we started with entry-level houses. And by 1992, we had run out of lots, and so we were looking for other opportunity. And so 2 miles to the west of Wichita, a town called Park City, Kansas, I think we have the mayor of Park City, former mayor, sitting here. So glad to have you here, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Glad to have you here.
And Mr. Representative now. And it was interesting because no one thought these lots had any value. I started buying them. I paid less than $1,000 for these lots a piece, and by 1992 I owned 30 of the lots. I bought some of them from other builders, bought some of them from realtors, so no one had any idea that these lots had value. I saw opportunity based on what I had seen over in Wichita. So we started building new houses. Well, and it's interesting because Park City there's no better word to use than stigmatized back then. And there were some reasons for it. Okay, now this doesn't have to do with the stigmatism, but the original Park City actually started southwest of current Valley Center. And Park City, the original Park City, competed with Wichita in the 1870s for the county seat and lost. And so today, there's nothing left of the city out there. The only remaining building out there was moved to Sedgwick. So, and one of these days, I'd like to have you email say, show me which one it is. I bet you know. After the Korean War, the federal government came up with a program. I don't know a lot of details about exactly how it worked, but you notice on this horseshoe, little horseshoe here, they decided to build, it's probably 300 houses for the returning veterans. Slab houses, we're going to look at some of those. And this is hydraulic, and this is 61st Street. So only this part here. So they built houses like this. They were not bad houses. They were all slab, 2 and 3 bedroom, and they were just cookie cutter basically, and they were all rental properties. If anyone knows anything about the rental business, and I didn't mention, I spent some time in rental also, but renters don't take the best care of property. There's no pride of ownership there. And to make a long story short, lacking the city government that was later established in 1980, if the sheriff felt like sending someone up to take care of problems, it got taken care of. A lot of it didn't get taken care of, so it became known as kind of like the Oak Lawn of today. It had that kind of a reputation. And I'm not picking on Oak Lawn because there's some positive things that could happen down there too. So eventually they decided to sell these houses, and in 1992 you could shop around, and I saw opportunities to buy these for $15,000 a piece. And it totally rehabilitated, they were probably worth more than 30. I don't have any idea what they're selling for today, but I consider these houses from a home ownership standpoint as an incubator type house. You can go from a mobile home to a house like this, and we took a lot of mobile homes over the years in trade for houses as down payments. I remember I learned from Carmen Pate on the diamond. So, and anyway, the Park City then started moving. There was additional development, and it was cyclic. It would build for a while, and then it would fall through for a while. So it's kind of like an accordion, basically. But a lot of times when they went through these development swings, there would be vacant lots left over, and they would churn back for taxes and draw weeds and trash. They became a blighting influence on their own. No one thought they had any value. I recognized they had value, and at least I was willing to put my money up. And by 1992, I owned 30 of these lots that I had less than $1,000 a piece in. Here's what the lots look like. And over a period of about 6 or 8 years, I bought over 150 lots from dozens of different property owners. And one of the things the city is going to tell you is that they have problems finding the owners. Believe me, if you're buying lots for $1,000 and you're folding them into houses for $4,500, you have a bit of a profit, you'll find the owners. So, I mean, the incentive basically was the profit incentive basically is the key that pushes it. Other lots, you can see these drew some weeds. These actually happen to be lots that tried to buy and was unsuccessful in buying. So when you look at this part of Park City, over here, there were literally just dozens and dozens of vacant lots. Primarily, Grove Street used to be the end of town. This area was called Boys Island, and Boys Island was a couple of different subdivisions, but a developer had put the sewer line in, and apparently didn't go on with the project and put the water in the streets. They started going back for taxes, and actually after a while, we had a couple, two dozen owners, and so in order to assemble those properties, you had to have 50% of the owners sign plus one before you could go to the city and put the sewer and water in, or the water in the streets. Now, without water and streets, if you owned a little lot here in the middle of it, this land is worthless. So it's actually, so the symbol was the key. Now we started building. Came up with a plan, 870 square foot. It was a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, 2-car garage, full basement. Base price, this is 1992, at $59,900. That's on a base price lot, a $4,500 lot. And so here we started. The phone would ring, and because I would advertise. I didn't dare advertise Park City because stigmatized area, there was no reputable realtor who was going to bring their serious buyers out. So I had to overcome that, basically. So the ad I wrote is new houses, base price $59,900, no special taxes. See, that's a kicker. Sewer, water, and gas sewer, water, and streets were all in and paid for. That was the advantage that we had. So the phone would ring, and the first question, now that ain't in Park City, is it? I said, well, yes, it is. Before you hang up, 6440 North Grove, and I'm making that address up. Here's how you get there. I'm not going to take your name or anything else. You drive up and you decide for yourself. So they drive up, and miraculously, people decided that they would buy these entry-level houses. It worked. And we started selling about 20 houses a year. The first, and after about 7, 8 years, we essentially ran out of infill lots, and we started developing land at that point in time. Over the period of 15 years, we put a minimum of 300 houses in Park City. Today, this little house, let me get you the commercial here. Here's what we're building them. Here's the commercial. I'm retired now, so none of that, I'm not available. And here's what the finished houses look like. And as time went by over the years, we were able to see when people, $59,900, if they wanted to finish in the basement, that would add on, and they could basically pick what they wanted. So they had choices, basically. That's really the key to the whole thing. And then as time went by, we wound up basically $175,000 houses. So we built the market that way. After 5 or 6 years of building these houses, it was just amazing what the success of creating jobs, expanding the tax base, and then combined with what we call ripple effect. You'd build a new house between 2 existing houses, and the 2 existing houses may need some paint. They may not be taking care of the yard. They might have some deferred maintenance, but when you build a new house, then they start taking care of the property. So that's called the ripple effect. This is what creates the economic uplift, basically. So after about 5 or 6 years, 7 years, I openly advertised Park City because we gained a reputation of being a place for good quality, entry-level houses that people could afford. Park City infill. It was the city is going to talk here shortly. We're going to talk about it. They want to talk about a land bank. Well, actually, in 1992, I had a land bank that had 30 houses in it. It's called a private land bank. I owned it. It was my money, basically. If that project had failed, I'd been the one taking the loss, right? They want to do public landfills. We did land acquisition through willing buyers, through voluntary exchange, with no government coercion. That's important. That's called private property rights. Very important for esprit de corps of our country. Land assembly. I showed you that area where there was 70, 80 houses, where I had to acquire enough of them to petition for the streets and for the water. I come back to my Colby Sandlin days, and Colby Sandlin taught me how to do options. He taught me how to do exchanges. Colby is a class act. He's really my mentor, and not a lot of people really realize how outstanding he is in the real estate business. So we did land assembly without the need for eminent domain. There were no government incentives involved. People used their mobile home as a down payment, or I would put them on through counseling, put them on a savings program, and help them maybe with their credit, where they got rid of bills and things so they could actually qualify. And a lot of them, if they didn't make the grade, I was candid with them and say, you need to wait for a while. And there's nothing wrong with that. You do those kind of things and people will come to you for business. There was no need for central planning done with government money and directed by inexperienced government planning staff who have no skin in the game and nothing to lose if their housing development ideas using taxpayer money are wrong. We see a lot of that today. It really grieves me when I see that. We took, I mentioned title problems. City officials at Wichita are going to talk about the title problems that they run across. I did dozens and dozens and dozens of lots. And in all those years, I only found one title problem that I couldn't solve. It was a federal tax lien that we couldn't get federal government to remove. All the rest of them, we worked through it. We created jobs, we expanded the tax base. Today, using today's numbers rather than 1992, my rough calculations that we added somewhere between $30 and $40 million to the tax base. That's tremendous uplift. The ad valorem tax on this one of those little entry-level houses today is around $1,700. That's the lower end. So if you take the middle and the upper end, you start take those numbers times 300, and now we begin to look at significant tax money to fund fire, police, and our schools. These are uplift things. And primary thing, I witnessed the miracle of the voluntary free market, private sector housing firsthand, and I know that it works. Now let's take a look at the evolution and planning of a government housing project. And we're going to start by showing a movie. This is, it'll explain itself. This is directly from the meeting before the City Council.
DER 2018-0003, Wichita Places for People Comprehensive Plan Amendment for an area of approximately 62 square miles bounded by 29th Street on the north, 31st Street on the south, Ridge Road on the west, and Rock Road on the east.
All right, good morning, Mayor and Council members. I'm Mary Hunt with the Planning Department, and today we're talking about Wichita Places for People. Today we're going to focus on the planning process. I know all of you have seen different presentations on this plan. I just want to take you back to where it all started. The Community Investment Plan was approved in 2015. That alone was a 3-year process. And in it identified an urban infill strategy that was necessary. It asked to promote infill development, attract and retain the talent that we desire, and take care of what we have. So the planning process also included identifying funding. So we have a partnership with the Wichita Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, and with their assistance, we were able to obtain funding for the plan that eventually became Wichita Places for People. They came up with 80% of the funding for this, which came from federal sources, which were a combination of surface transportation program money as well as transportation alternatives. And together, those were put together and called Planning Walkable Places. And so we contracted with Gould Evans Consulting to assist in developing this plan. But more importantly, we engaged the community at every stage of the planning process. So we formed the Urban Infill Advisory Committee back in 2017. They began meeting shortly after that. There were 29 members, and they were a cross-section of the community. There were stakeholder groups, including Mennonite Housing, the development community, Habitat for Humanity, our business community, as well as citizen representatives from each district, neighborhood association representatives, and then a team of 24 technical advisors. This group convened for more than 2 years, which is a considerable commitment from a group of citizens. So with that, we went, here we go. Our public engagement portion of all of this included 17 advisory committee meetings where the public was welcome and did attend. We had 4 public events at our libraries, radio, television interviews. We had 6 DAB presentations, and then 3 civic group presentations as a sample. We also had different city council presentations, planning commission meetings dedicated only to this. We had our visual preference survey, had 300 responses there, and we had social media throughout. And we had a unanimous approval from our advisory committee and our planning commission and 5 of the 6 DABs. And last night, we met with DAB 1 once again, and they did vote. They recommended approval. Their vote was 5-3. So what's next? The next thing is that we prioritize the action steps that are listed in here. And we will need the Planning Commission and the Council's guidance on how to do that. We're looking at trying to make more practical regulations to help make this happen, looking at perhaps the establishment of a land bank that's customized for our needs, looking at all of the economic development tools that are currently available, and then, of course, how the CIP will fit into this. So today I ask you to adopt the recommended action of the Planning Commission and adopt this plan as an amendment to our community investment plan. And I'll stand for questions.
Any questions at this point? Don't see any questions. I do have a question, probably more towards staff at this point. Is there anything in the adoption of this plan that is restrictive or policy in nature that would actually guide building or zoning options, restrictions? I mean, any changes that really are law in nature?
Any amendments to the zoning code that, as you know, regulate land use and establish the development standards would have to come back as separate amendments specific to the unified zoning code that would have to go through Planning Commission, then ultimately to the City Council for consideration and ultimately approval or denial.
So
But all this plan does is set up the authority for staff to explore the tools needed to implement the plan, and that could involve amendments to the zoning code, or at least proposed amendments.
And then from then, everything comes back to us anyways for a formal vote.
Correct.
Okay.
And Mayor, that would apply also to the items that were listed on the slide that Mary had, a land bank, the use of incentives in the district, as well as CIP projects that would support that.
Right. It doesn't grant staff any extra authority, or there's nothing that comes with this.
No, this is the first step in a planning process.
All right. I appreciate it. Councilmember Claycomb?
I have a follow-up question to the mayor's question. So more specifically, what would that process look like as those things come back to us? What kind of public engagement would there be? What would the steps of that be to bring back amendment to the zoning code?
Specifically to the amendment of the zoning code, we have to publish by state law. We have to publish in the newspaper. There is no individual notice with area-wide zoning changes or regulation changes, but we do have to publish in the newspaper, and then Advanced Plans Committee would review it, the Planning Commission review it, there would be a public hearing at the Planning Commission, and as part of the process, we would obviously have stakeholders and neighborhood representatives that would be involved in discussing any proposed amendments, and then we typically send those out to the DABs as well, just like we did this time with the plan. So there would be extensive opportunity for input and comment.
And that'd be on each and every change, right? I mean, we could bring them as a package, but it would.
Right, it would be a package,
Yeah.
but yes, and the land bank, we're going to have to explore how that would work if that's something that we end up moving forward with, but there will be opportunity for anybody to be involved and comment.
Okay. Thank you, Dale.
All right, any other questions? So I will add again that by council policy, this typical body does not open it up to a public hearing. In fact, the public hearing for this item was held at the MAPC meeting. And then, of course, we gave people the opportunities to attend the DAB meetings. But because this is a little unique, and I've heard from some folks that would like to see these proceedings opened up today for any public comment, I'm going to move that we suspend the council rules in this one particular incident and do allow the public to speak, and specifically suspend policy 9 for this agenda item and allow public comments today.
We're going to call this the evolution and planning for a government housing project. Is that what it sounds like? Yes, sir.
If I remember right, most people that talk about evolution talk about millions and millions of years.
You see, Emil, I think you make a good point. And also, just as an aside, that when you look at the around town and the evolution of nice affordable housing, it's really happened more than an eternity. Look at the progress. I mean, you just look everywhere. And was it done with a government housing project? We're going to get involved in that here shortly. The key thing here, you picked up on it, sets up the authority for the staff to explore the tools needed to implement the plan. Now, you notice the language was not there that says no mention of not scrapping the plan, right? Because they'd gone out and sold this plan. You know, and in fact, I think you probably even heard of the MAPC, right? I'm not put you on the spot, but the I mean when you just look at this, basically it looks pretty innocent. Establish a land bank. See, there was no mention of a private land bank, right? So do we really want government establishing a land bank so they can control property, maybe use taxpayer money to pay for it, and then hand it out basically to the people they want to have it? You know, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Establish a land bank needed just land for a land assembly, and it solves those pesky private property rights issue. That's my opinion. They can use the pressure of government basically to ask people politely, do you want your house bulldozed and you're going to get nothing, or would you like to be a hero and just let us have it? I mean, this is my opinion. Establish practical zoning regulation for certain neighborhoods. Well, if there are practical zoning regulations, why don't we have them on the books now? So if the code basically is too restrictive, we need to change it so that we can attract the private sector into neighborhoods that need revitalized. Yes, sir.
Now, they're going to start the land bank with all of the land that they have received back from failed TIF districts, et cetera?
I have no idea, Myra, basically. But one other thing you heard, they want to determine. See, I was in a meeting. I went to a lot of meetings over the last 3 years. Sat in a meeting with one of the planners, basically, and I raised my hand. I said, "What role will the private sector play? Will he be using private money?" And he switched immediately, talking about TIFs, grants, and community investment plans. The man has no clue, basically, what you do in the private sector to build housing developments, right? You spend a lot of time, like Colby Sandlin, you become the expert basically first before you invest your own dollars. And then when you invest your own dollars, you might be a little more careful with them than if you're investing public dollars. So they didn't talk about this, but there's going to be a need for a mechanism to bring private partners to form private-public partnerships. Who will these partners be? We still don't know all the ones on the ball diamond thing. One of my favorite comments is the one that Carl Peterjohn used. He said that private-public partnership means if there's any profit, the private side gets it. If there's any loss, the taxpayer takes it. I mean, that's private-public partnership, in my opinion. And actually, just look around and you'll see that's pretty accurate. There was no mention in the plan for a private sector involvement to implement the staff's redevelopment plan, and there was no mention of private sector funding. And then conveniently, they went from having meetings that involved urban infill development committee to places for people. That's a more politically correct. Now that's interesting because see, now we're going to have government providing and determining what people place that they're going to for people. I mean, it's a nice collective way of saying we know what's right for you, in my personal opinion. Any other questions or comments at this point? Yes.
I kept thinking that you could have built 2 houses in the time it just took them to explain
Yeah.
that, try to explain that.
Well, they were interested in selling this idea, and in all due respect, we've got planners that probably have some pretty fancy type degrees, basically, but I'm inclined to think that probably none of them ever built a house, none of them ever done an infill. I mean, all due credit. Yes.
I heard Ms. Hunt give a presentation on this a week or so ago, and I asked her, about the implementation of the plan. And basically, there's little to no planning on implementation of the plan. The land banking, they don't have a clue how they're going to do that yet. And the rest of, she just said, as well, we'll just, people be able to use, incentives, some of the incentives. Well, it's, that's already, people can already do that. And I just kept thinking, my own little comment that if you're relying on a check from the government in the plan, it's not a private plan anymore.
Right.
It's all a government plan. So I always get kind of offended at public-private term because it's not public-private. It's
What we're seeing here is the evolution of a plan. So they've got the authority now to let the staff. We're not talking about private sector people who've been there. We're talking about the staff in the glass building. They're going to set up the plan basically because they know what we need, right, Cheryl?
I am not a resident, and I've been informed when I go to those meetings, and I am not a resident. But I do feel like I have a stake here because I was born here in Sedgwick County, and my friends are here and everything. But I do want to interject that I just have a terrible gut feeling that, this water park that's been put at Lakeshore. And I grew up at Lakeshore, and we were not allowed to swim in that part of the lake. And then now we've got all of those floats down in that part of the lake where we were told everybody would drown. And so now the city's liable for all of that water park being down there. And then I find out that Jeff Bluebaugh, his license, he's got all of the land for sale right next door. that to me seems like a conflict of interest. When he's selling all that land, he has the real estate, you know,
Yeah.
that's his land.
Yeah.
And see, I just went through Pawnee Prairie Park with him. That was deeded, you know, over, if no one knows, that was our riding park since I was a little kid. And I'm 67 years old and I've ridden my horses there. And it is now a concrete park. That's what happened to your $1 million that the council members each got. And he just happens to have two little boys that ride bikes.
Yeah.
And he has a house at Pawnee Park that opens right up to Pawnee Park. That those little boys need a place to ride those bikes. So I'm not being angry, I'm not being ugly, but Pawnee Park
No,
is not.
what we're really talking about is central planning. And is it,
Yeah, I know, but it just
And
gives
there
me
may
that
be-
feeling, you know, what's gonna happen with
and
this.
maybe parks is a place where we need planning,
Uh-huh.
but maybe housing is something that we really need to let the private sector.
Well, it's all the same background.
Yes.
What prompted this whole planning thing? For 3 years, they've studied something. Did something fail? Did a private entity fail? They have to come in and be the savior? You know, and I know one of the councilmen has a license in real estate. How do these people that
This map is one that, I was on the MAPC for a year. And I learned a lot while I was there. It gave me, in fact, I'd encourage people to get involved and get on the MAPC if you can get there. This is the building blocks for the infill project. When you look at this, you can come up afterwards. All of these green rectangles represent vacant lots. And this is primarily 67214 area. This would be 14th Street. This goes down to around 8th Street. This is I-135, and this goes over to roughly Hillside. And I'm going to play a movie here shortly that talks about how the city's approach to dealing with this neighborhood, tearing down houses that had economic value, and the movie's going to talk about it basically, and charging $8,000 to $10,000 back against the lot in the form of a special assessment for the teardown fee. They still own the lot, but now in order to sell a lot that goes back for taxes for less than $500, people don't pay the taxes, and they routinely get sold at tax sale and sell for $500 or less. I mean, this is. I'm afraid this might be the government housing that we've been seeing.
Well,
Yes.
You mentioned that Habitat for Humanity and Housing was involved in some of the meetings.
Yeah.
They went into the orchard area you were talking about prior, and Habitat has done a lot of houses over there. Why can't they do this?
We're going to talk a little bit about that. Habitat is probably my favorite one. The thing that Ann Fox does over there, she's very good. They do training. They have people who come in and do work on their houses. So it's people who earn the right to own the house. So I really, it's probably the best. Now the question basically boils down to: are we going to have enough people or give enough money? Hers is all done on contributions to redevelop our core area. So I think we have to move some beyond just the Habitat. They do wonderful work. Yes.
John, in my opinion, the origin of this was that somebody in the planning department or City Hall found out that there was federal funds available
Yes.
to do such a study. And they've done it. But I seriously doubt that it's going to go anywhere. I don't see that it has any legs. As you pointed out, there's no plan to involve private investment in this. It's a good idea, but it's just kept somebody employed for a while to do this plan.
You may absolutely be right, because but we're going through all of this machinations, and actually, I would tell anyone in the room that if you want to get in my car and spend a couple hours with me, I'll show you Park City, show you what we did up there. I'll drive you anywhere you want in Wichita, but we can go to the area where it looks like a tornado's gone through because of what they've done to that neighborhood over there. Houses that had and structural value, you're going to see the movie here just shortly. And it really grieves me that we've got, and we have, it's interesting because we have association people for builders groups, realtors groups who support this. And they're supposed to be interested in private property rights and free market capitalism. And so tell me why, I don't know the answer to that. Okay, it's time to go to the next. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the Wichita City Council. My name is John Todd. I live at 1559 Payne here in Wichita, Kansas. Thank you so much for suspending your rules, basically, and allowing citizen input. I think it's very important. Everyone wants economically vibrant neighborhoods in our city with secure private property rights. I believe the long-term sustainable economic uplift in housing has always been driven by the private sector, tax-paying businesses using their own funds. I am not a fan of land banks that's created by government for the use by private-public partnerships in land development. There's the problems I have with it. It allows municipalities to cede power to select private organizations who control the property. And I think for a lot of citizens, that's a problem. And when we have a vibrant private sector community like we do, I can tell you that I've been watching property for quite some time, and we're seeing houses like this created and rejuvenated. Several of you, let's see, Councilmember Bluebaugh, Clendenin, City Manager, we've had others basically have taken my tour basically through the 67214 neighborhood and also into Park City to see the land development, the redevelopment we did on infill lots up there. All was done. I was the land bank in 1992 in Park City, Kansas. We didn't need a private-public partnership to do it. So my basic recommendations to you: be very careful on how you set up. In fact, I would just ask that you not use land banks at all. I really think that the private sector needs to step up and take advantage of opportunities that are absolutely everywhere to do infill and to do rehabilitation to properties that will create low-cost, sustainable housing that creates the opportunity for home ownership, which I think is really the desired goal of government on all levels. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
What do you think so far?
Yes, sir.
What I think so far? I think that in 1980, 81, 82, Boys Island was the tail end of a housing project that had to die because the market wasn't there for the houses. And if anybody remembers 80, 81, 82, it was a tough economic time for anybody that had investments, and interest rates were sky high, and it could only become viable when it was privately viable. And in this case, in maybe a simple case, but it took private investment. And I don't know, this is the question I have. Why are people afraid of private investors who have money, but they're not afraid of the government spending your money to invest? It just makes no sense, because if a private investor is willing to do it, then let them take the risk. And quietly, John and building partner went through and took the risk. And the other thing was that without any more new impetus, that helped 6 more housing developments start in Park City. Mm-hmm. 5 or 6 total that went from that level housing up to $350,000. And that's the difference when you have somebody that says, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a risk, and people are going to catch on. People said, okay, I'll come take a look at it. That's what I think.
Thank you.
Does the city ever say they had to do this because there's no private entity that wants to take this on, this risk?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question, but I do know from watching the city council a lot over the years that I've heard city council members say that the reason we have to do this because of private market failure. That's pretty shallow in my opinion. So, you know, if how would
They bring up their own zoning things, it's like they're falling over their own feet. Maybe the
Right.
private entity can't do anything because of their.
well, maybe the private entity could do more if they revised some of those zoning codes and made it easier, and maybe the permit fees would be less. You see, so
Incentivize it that way.
right,
Remove some of the restrictions on building in the first place.
right.
That are not necessary.
I think there's no better incentive in the marketplace, if you believe in free markets, than the incentive to make money, a profit. That's the essence.
I think that the government doesn't want to give it up to the private sector because they don't want to lose the power that they derive from.
It would be my guess that, it'd be my guess they go to too many League of Municipality meetings and those type. I mean, I'm serious. This is where planning committees and all over. Okay, anyone else? What do you think so far? Yes, sir.
Curious, when I think of minimized housing, I think of a benevolent or charitable organization. I would be given to understand that's really not a charity, it's more of a
We're going to
less supported business.
We're going to talk about that a little bit here in the next segment. An observation that I have, the staff that's going to implement this plan is made up mostly of people who have little or no actual on-the-ground experience. Is that a problem? It really is. So, and it was interesting because on the infill committee, I did my level best based on the experience that I had in Park City. I mean, I did it basically over a period of time. There wasn't any way politically that I could work my way onto that committee. So, and I don't know why. Although I will say this is one of my favorite jokes. I have over the years worked my way off of the mayor's Christmas card mailing list, and I don't know why. So. 1960s variety of public housing. Anyone ever see any of these? So have I, and I don't know an awful lot about them, but was this anything of a great uplift for people? Basically, this is community housing development organization. This is federal money. There are a couple of nonprofits who do this. These houses were designed to go, in my opinion, to do infill, like we did in Park City. This house, I suspect, to build probably costs $115,000, $125,000. The actual cost to build it. My numbers, you can go online. In fact, I've had a request into Senator Roberts' office for quite some time, trying to find out more about the funding on some of these type things, without an awful lot of success. But they only sell them for in the range of $92,000. So the difference between what it costs and $92,000, guess who picks that up? People who pay taxes pick it up. It's also possible for someone to go to the Kansas Housing Resource Corporation, and they're coupled with HUD. That's Housing and Urban Development, federal program. And if they meet certain income guidelines, that $92,000, they can get an additional 20% for a down payment. So there's another $15,000, $18,000. So the federal taxpayers, they don't do, I think they do about 10 of these a year. They're tremendously expensive. And it's also an interesting note, when you're in the car, we'll go up and I'll show you where they've done a lot of these. They didn't do it infill, they did it in new development, basically, that was adjacent to the 67214 area. I mean, so There's not a lot of oversight, in my opinion, on where that program's used. Okay, Wichita-owned houses. We had John Hall, who was the former housing director of the city of Wichita at Pachyderm, and he advised us that the city of Wichita owns 352 single-family houses. This happens to be one of them, and it's located in that shaded area. This house, 352 of them. This house is not paying any taxes for fire, police, and schools. It's owned by the city. It's off the tax rolls, right? The county appraiser has it appraised for around $30,000. And my question is, why aren't we working trying to sell that house to the property owner or to the renter? And I had a friend at one of the savings and loans recently calculate what a payment would be, and it was in the range of $300 a month. Now, from a home ownership standpoint, isn't that a lot more desirable? And we had Mr. Hall to Pachyderm, and he was talking about they had a $60 million grant to rehabilitate these houses. I'm going to tell you, all brick, and it's got a Heritage 2 shingle. The house is in pretty good shape. It's really ready to be sold. This is French Quarter, 39 duplexes, 78 units, $14 million project. Senator Roberts, I asked his office if they could find out who the developers, or who the moneyed people were that funded this. And so far, we haven't been able to find out who it is. So there were tremendous tax credits, and that's money, that's our money too. That money, in my opinion, should be going into the Treasury, United States Treasury, rather than funding these kind of projects. Figures out to $14 million divided by 78 is almost $180,000 per unit. Strikes me as that a bit pricey. So when you're a nonprofit building these, do you really care what they cost? Right? Are you going to hold the line like you would if you're building a single family in Park City or any place else around town? So now, here's the tragedy of the whole thing, in my personal opinion. It is possible for someone to actually get in one of these units under Section 8 subsidized rent, and they tell me it's routine for people to be in under Section 8 for years and years and years. Someone could actually be in one of these units under reduced rent, maybe the $300 a month, where they could buy the little house and walk out in 30 years retirement age and own nothing. I consider that the tragedy of this. Maybe I'm wrong, but now nice units. It's a nice place for people, and maybe we need to do this for people who fall in the crack. I don't know, but I think that there was a Frontline did a story on these type of projects, not Wichita but other areas of the country, and if anyone interested in that copy of that video, you would be interested in seeing what they had to say about these type of projects in other areas of the country. Habitat. Forgive me, I didn't have a very good picture, but this is the type of picture Ann Fox is building. She's got a project over there called Rock the Block on Green, and if you get a chance to go over, it really is pretty exciting what she's doing. There's a little ruckus in that neighborhood right now because Westar wanted to get rid of the old power lines and put a new one in, and instead of putting power lines like this, they put these big ones in, and that's a story for another day, basically. But I understand that they're being pushed to make that right with the folks. Okay, what is the role we have the state legislature playing in this program? For the last at least 5 years, I've been spending time in Topeka fighting in opposition to tearing down houses. And the cities want additional power, and we'll just let you watch the video. You can hear what I have to say. This was 2018. House Bill 2506 is bad legislation because it violates basic private property rights that are guaranteed under our Constitution. It encourages government to exercise eminent domain, seize your private property without compensation, adequate notice, due process of law, and a legal title to the property. There really is a better private sector solution versus a government solution. Hello, my name is John Todd. I spent my career as a private sector real estate entrepreneur. I specialize in redeveloping neighborhoods where I witnessed firsthand job creation, expanding the tax base that provides revenue, local revenue for fire, police, schools to educate our children, and generally overall economic uplift for the neighborhood. Whether it's the hand of government seizing property without compensation or an agent, a nonprofit that they've picked seizing property, the outcome is no different. These are houses that the city actually bulldozed, and they paid the owners of the properties no compensation whatsoever. It's interesting that in 2015, 70% of the properties bulldozed in the city of Wichita were in the zip code of 67214, which is part of this map. It disproportionately impacts low-income and minority neighborhoods. This house was vacant, and as you can see, it needed painting. There were obvious code violations. This house would have been a target for the city of Wichita bulldozing. However, it sold at a tax foreclosure sale for $5,500. A young couple purchased it. They did rehabilitation, and you can see the work that they've completed on the house. It provides low-cost, entry-level houses. It saved the tax base and provided tremendous neighborhood uplift. Can you imagine what might have happened on those vacant lots that you saw earlier if those houses had been saved like this young couple, and the neighborhood would had a third or half of those vacant lots would had houses like this? This is what economic development's all about. This property went to the Building Code Standards and Appeals. They voted to condemn this property. The major problem had nothing to do with blight. It had to do with a structural defect that, as it turns out, proved to be repairable at a reasonable cost to make the property for sale at a viable cost. A private sector investor found the owner of the property. He had made the offer to purchase the property and was able to save the property from bulldozing. The wall that he repaired cost less than $10,000. He was able to purchase the property for less than $15,000, and the house to the north and south of this property are currently on the Sudbury County tax rolls in the $100,000 to $110,000 range. So instead of having a vacant, ugly, weed-infested lot that has a blighting influence on this nice neighborhood, this private sector investor salvaged this house for the tax base. What a nice addition for the neighborhood. Now, this is a prime example of an entry-level house that helps a young couple build equity. House Bill 2506 is bad legislation. The legislation gives local authorities unmitigated power in determining which properties should be seized, allowing localities to write their own rules. It also seized to municipalities the power to select which private, nonprofit organizations receive control of the property. Fundamentally, this bill is an assault to the basic American principles of individual liberty and private property rights. It also established an all-too-cozy system between municipalities and private nonprofit organizations that is rife with the potential for cronyism and government abuse. Proof that the blight label has been falsely applied can be found in many instances of houses that have been saved from demolition, restored, and returned to habitable, tax-producing homes. One man's trash is indeed another man's treasure. The better alternative is to allow investors, first-time homeowners, and others to cooperate in the free market, paying a fair market price for distressed houses that they further invest in, make habitable and attractive to buyers. These homes return to the tax rolls, provide opportunity for low-cost housing without government action and taxpayer subsidy, encourage uplift in the neighborhood in a self-sustaining system. Now, with that video that Paul Suter helped me put together, to absolutely, I owe a tremendous debt to Senate President Susan Wagle to help get that legislation from passing last year. You see her thank her for protecting private property rights. The thing that I find most really disturbing about this, that we have people in the real estate business, and we have remodelers, we have a whole builders association, we have a realtors association, and these folks should be out looking for opportunities. Spend some time in the car, and I'm serious about that. We just drive, spend a couple hours in the car, and if I was 20 years younger, I would be doing this. I'm not doing it anymore, basically, but I'm trying to mentor people into doing it, and so there really is tremendous opportunity, and we don't have to be doing these kind of things to the houses. Moving forward, this year, you may know a fellow named Brownfelter from Kansas City area, a couple of legislators in the room. He has been working on this for forever, basically, and I think the policy they have in Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County is the government is the solution. I think we need to take a different approach than what they're doing, but he's been pushing for legislation, and this year it was House Bill 2314. I suggested that rather than the bill, basically it's essentially the same bill that we've had the last 4 or 5 years, would allow cities to locate properties that had housing violations that were vacant and turn them over to nonprofits to rehabilitate, right? How much money they're going to be? No money. And so that's a problem. So taking with that compensation, I consider that another form of eminent domain. It's just plain and simple, in my personal opinion. So I've had the audacity to suggest that let's modify this bill and put a clause in there that would require, if the city finds one of these houses, instead of giving it to someone, let's do a tax sale type transaction. And just a recent tax sale was June the 13th. I didn't put it up here. I found this house, 2739 North Green, sold at the tax sale. This has housing violations on it. In my personal opinion, if it went through the whole process, it could be a candidate for demolition, right? So it went through a tax sale and sold for $14,500. Now that's better than. Now where does that money go? On a tax sale, the money goes to the district court. It's actually held at the district court to pay the back taxes. I don't know what they were on this one, and the court costs, but probably $3,000 would cover it. And then the balance of the money is sitting there, so if an heir or an owner comes in after the fact, they can claim the balance. So this is far better than letting a nonprofit take it, pay nothing, and then after a couple of years basically go to the court and seek quiet title action after they've repaired it and essentially take it at that point. A problem we had this year, we got the language, Representative Capps carried the water on this one, got the language in there for a tax sale, but they still have the language in there that they're still going to be subject to the court. They're going to pay for the property. It'd be like having this property held for a couple of years by the court, where a property owner that paid for it he got possession, but he didn't get a deed basically. So he gets to work with central inspection and city for 2 additional years in the court to rehabilitate it to their specifications, and then seeks quiet title action. So 2 things. It needs to have a sale, it needs to have a sheriff's deed, it needs to have possession, and the possession is the part so we've got this stalled this year, past the House, and we're going to be working on this with the Senate next spring. So anyone interested in helping on this type of issue, I would certainly welcome you. Public-private partnerships. We've already discussed the land bank. Anyone have anything else to say about land banks? Any impressions of how good they are, how bad they are? Or maybe we should leave land banking to the private sector. That's my opinion. People who invest their own money, and if they miss the mark, basically, they're the ones that suffer the loss. What can a citizen do? I like this. Be an informed citizen. The most dangerous man to any government is a man who is able to think things out without regard to the prevailing superstitions and taboos. That's H.L. Mencken. It's interesting because here I am in front of the city council. Now I am retired, but I used to get up before I retired. You would think that people who are in the business in the real estate business or the building business would be there in droves basically to support the position of fighting for private property rights, but they're afraid to, right? So what can citizens do? You can be an activist. In fact, you saw me in front of the city council. I don't think I gave them any reason to really take me off the Christmas card mailing list. But that's okay, and I'm joking about the Christmas card things. Our approach when before city councils or before school county commissions or before legislative committees is to be effective. To be effective, you got to take a positive approach. You got to sell your ideas. You got to be a protagonist versus an antagonist. As you have opportunities to reach out and teach seminars, address the news media, write letters to the editor, I think you're going to do that, or help someone get elected to the city council, county commission, or the legislature, then we have some of those folks.
Cheryl says thanks too.
Then you have some, and Bill Riley. Then you have some of those folks that when you need help shepherding a bill through the legislature, they're going to be your right hand and very helpful doing that. And yes.
When you gave that address, did you get any feedback from anybody at the council, people sitting in the...
There's a young lady in this room that wrote an article on it. And you might introduce yourself.
I'm Gloria Van Rees. I'm a reporter with the Sentinel. We're a division of the Kansas Policy Institute.
Okay.
And to her credit, to her absolute credit, she wrote a nice article, and it was not just one side; it was two sides basically, and I thought she gave our side a real fair hearing on it.
Okay. So you did get.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But
Now,
the council doesn't respond.
I'm not sure they even read the Sentinel, but I mean,
listen to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Did I say that? I'm sorry. I have to have a lot of fun with these folks. You know, you might as well.
Stressful to appear before the council.
It is.
If you've ever done it, they're not real out there.
They had made up their mind in advance what they were going to do with this bill, or this legislation. So I mean, that's a problem. Actually, it was interesting because there was not one single question from the city council, and I got no response from anyone in the audience. And if it hadn't been for the Sentinel, and so far, to date, this program is something that's in process, and there's not been one single word written about it in the Wichita Eagle.
Well, one of the problems of not understanding what you said was that it wasn't discussed during that whole 2 years of committee work.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
The concept wasn't thrown into the mix.
And I guess the question, how many in this room, we got an active citizen here, how many were aware of this before this just came up?
I knew because being
Right.
around you.
Yeah.
Right. The squeaky wheel, yeah.
Yeah, the squeaky wheel.
Well, you know, I think it goes further than just a matter of the citizens being uninformed. I've had experience myself asking questions of the city council and others
and not getting answers, because honestly, they don't know the answers. They are
Yeah.
uninformed about too many things, but yet sit up there and pass, ordinances and plans and so forth.
The truth of the matter is, they're not bad people, but they absolutely don't know anything about real estate development. But yet they'll try to do it, and usually based on staff people who've never done it. I mean, that's a recipe for failure, in my personal opinion. Yes.
Well, I did write the council over this last thing with an individual doctor or lady that's a realtor wants to build a school downtown, and I just asked how did you get her, what process it was. I did this by emails. I got 2 of them to respond, and it basically they didn't know. They just basically, why are you picking on her?
Yeah.
Why do you want to know about her?
Well,
And I said nothing. I just that we got stung before,
Well,
and they gave me to the city manager because they didn't know.
Well, Mary Kay, I'm going to give you a lot of credit. I see your fingerprints on a lot of things where you're trying to make a difference, and that's what it takes. Also, we have someone in the room that was responsible for a full-page ad in the Eagle, and she's sitting back here. I compliment you.
And like you said, it wasn't. It's like if you ask a question, you're a big bad bully person. It's like, just answer the question. It's just
Right.
I'm wanting information. Answer the question. But
Yeah.
I've decided. I've had a couple of epiphanies with other things that they don't know. That's why they don't answer, because they don't know. It's like the parking garage for the ballpark village now.
Well-
Scott Knievel openly was quoted in the Wichita Eagle, we can believe everything they say, that they didn't know how they were going to pay for it, and they really didn't know too much about it, but they were going to build a parking garage.
And actually, let's I'm going to paraphrase what I've heard nationally. Let's pass this thing to find out what's in it. Right.
The footprint they have in mind for parking garage is privately owned property that has houses on it.
Now, that's going to be flat lot parking. And that's Mr. Jerry Jones owns that. He bought it just before the ballpark village plan came out, and is going to raise the houses on it, get rid of the houses. So I can only imagine how much it's going to cost to park on that parking lot after he's built lots with houses on them and tore the houses down.
Get something.
Parking garage is going to be up by where the where the church is,
in a bus terminal.
Douglas and.
And the bus terminal's there because they can't get any federal money unless they got something tied to a bus.
Okay.
I'd ask you, John, the housing addition you showed that had a fence around it that was like a $114,000 house, or I don't know what you said, probably the unit cost. Wouldn't you say that there's a pretty heavy mark of federal regulations that add cost to those buildings?
There's some guidelines on low income that really do hamper.
Right.
And it's possible that house that you saw, that it's possible someone could wind up buying that for as low as $73,000.
Right.
Now,
And the problem being that if a developer decided to build it, he would look for he would still go by the building code and build by building standards, but he'd have the ability to shop for the best price, the best contractor to get his job done, and still come up with a quality product.
Because it's his own money, and it's that he's risking, and if he loses money on it, he doesn't get to look to the taxpayer to bail him out.
The reason I say that is because Park City, their money was reserve money that was in the bank, and so the people really wanted a library, but the plan was to build a $2.5 million library with some bonding and with some donated money, and to save up a little bit of money. And we ended up spending less than a year and $1 million to build the library that needed to be built with the people's money. Done deal. And because we didn't have to have federal regulations on on contracting. We didn't have to have a lot of extra regulations. And so, I mean, private industry, that's a private partnership that you contract directly. You know? So anyway.
Anyone else? I wanted to comment a little bit about the land. Okay, number one, I found things that help me in the political process is to build a relationship with our elected officials. One of the ways you can do that is help someone get elected, and you try to elect people that think the way you do. That's important, basically, and then you hold them accountable. Otherwise, if you believe me, I have done all of the wrong things over the years as far as getting up and speaking, and people think you're a naysayer, and our regular newspaper are going to classify you as a newspaper. I knew I had arrived when my wife read me an article where I had spoken. Basically, it says John Todd, comma, longtime City Hall critic, comma. I was shocked, you know. Actually, I was honored. Frankly, I was honored. But they're going to view you as a naysayer. And let's go back to the question is basically on the sports complex. $1 an acre for land, and then people like me know that when they bought the 8 acres for the new library, they paid $8.50 a square foot from a private owner of that. And the math, my numbers are going to be approximate. That's around $73,000 an acre. And then they ask if you have the audacity to question how they come up with that number and how they fit that whole thing in. You're a caveman, you're a citizen against virtually everything, and you're against progress. And that's not the case at all. We have a right to know how public funds are spent and how public land is used. It's ours, basically. So.
I still don't think you make as much demand as I do.
You have a special knack, maybe, Myron. So we may have to have lunch, and maybe you can teach me.
No.
I think another thing on in all of these issues, learn who the opposition is, and I routinely seek them out, and you'll be surprised at the opposition, who they are. Private property rights. Wouldn't you think the chamber groups? Wouldn't you think that the organization of builders and real estate people would be staunch private property rights people? But here's what happens. If some among you fear taking a stand because you're afraid of reprisals from customers, clients, or even government, recognize that you're just feeding the crocodile, hoping he'll eat you last. That's the essence of where we are. And I'm going to end it at this point. It's time. I'm going to issue you a challenge to move forward, get involved, help someone get elected that thinks like you do, whatever your criteria is. Have them appoint you to MAPC, Board of Code Standards and Appeals. You've been to a meeting there. What did you think of the meeting at Board of Code? Was that a shock?
It was eye-opening. So it's a citizen board for the most part. There's some elected, or not elected, appointed positions, and then there are city employee positions alongside just everyday citizens who happen to know a lot about contracting, a lot about the insurance side, and they make decisions in that room on what happens to someone's property. And so if you're in a code violation, and it could be a very minor code violation, I was terrified to witness how eager some of the people on this board were to rescind that person's property rights and then decide what happens next with that property, absent that person's input. I highly recommend, if you can, that you go. They meet once a quarter now.
They meet every month. They're scheduled every month, but sometimes they'll be every other month. So it's critical. In fact, if you want to be put on the mailing list for some of those kind of things, let me know, and I'll pass the information along. We've even had someone from the Realtors Organization. I think he was shocked with what he saw. What we have is non-elected governmental officials, they're appointed officials basically. You can't imagine the power that they have over citizens on their property. It's shocking basically. And without joining and being, I'm not exaggerating this.
No, and it's not a court either. It's a room that looks very much like this with plastic fold-up tables. And people just meet, they'll hear your case. And John's not exaggerating it. I was really frustrated and a little bit terrified at the power that this collective had.
What's the name of the committee?
MAVCD.
Okay, but that's the department.
Yeah.
It's called Board of Code Standards and Appeals. Board of Code Standards and Appeals.
Is that the meetings that take no notes also, what goes on in the meetings? So you have a video?
That's the municipal court there. That's another story for another night probably.
Or something.
Yeah.
What we need to do too is we need to infiltrate our news media and try to get them turned around. And it's a good idea. It's best for everyone's interest that we tell the truth, whether it's good or bad. But just tell the truth. Don't because I can see right now it's going to be hard for any conservative candidate that's any good to run for an office because first thing they're going to do, they're going to pile on top of them and just beat them to death.
Right.
With all kinds of accusations. I've seen it done nationally, how it's being done. Some representatives being accused of this and that, and you come to find out that didn't even do anything.
It will amaze you what's going on behind the scenes if you get involved sometimes. And I am personally very concerned about what's happening in our country. We're losing our rights through the administrative state. It's boards, committees like we're talking about, who promulgate their own rules. They do legislation, essentially. They hold court hearings, and that no stenographic record. It's a one-way street, basically. So it's typical non-elected governmental officials making rules and adjudicating their own rules. It's a classic administrative state. It's a problem that we're facing in this country. We're losing our freedoms as a result of it, in my personal opinion. Bill, relationships with old hands are doing the business. Mary Kay, you're very good at writing letters, and Deborah, she had a full page in the Eagle, and so there's some others in the room basically. So let's use those folks for mentoring, and get involved in committees. There's all sorts of committees basically. They're everywhere. You can get involved in neighborhoods. I know John and Deborah are very involved in their own neighborhood, and they had Mary out to do that presentation. I suspect there wasn't an awful lot of balance there that night because the city is trying to sell this program.
Your presentation's better.
Yeah. John, I'll have your check for you at the end of the meeting. Yeah.
John,
Yes,
from
sir.
the legislature, we would love to see you folks present yourself at a committee meeting when some of these things are coming before. It's great when John will come and other known advocates, rabble-rousers, city council haters, whatever. But in Topeka, if you would verse yourself and then come as real Joe Blow citizen that people have never known and met before, your voice will make a difference.
Yeah.
And what he said about it's going to be difficult for somebody to get elected that is against this in that area, and I understand that. But surround it with positive. We've got a lot of good conservative folks in Sedgwick County that just need more associates.
I have spent a lot more time over the years in Topeka before legislative committees, and there's a reason for that. As a citizen, you're up there you may have 30 lobbyists sitting in the room, but I'm going to guarantee you, as a citizen fresh off the street, you weigh more. I mean, you've got more clout. Am I right?
That's right.
Because you all don't see common citizen a lot. Former senator told me that in a year's time she got 19 letters from constituents. That's not very many in a full legislative session. Letters make a big difference, I think. Sending testimony in. So there are all sorts of ways to get involved. And I don't want to keep you, we've spent an awful lot of time on this. I really appreciate everyone being here tonight. Anything else? Get involved. I think our country is worth saving. I think that...
John had some.
Yes, John.
I was just going to say that Mary, I got into a discussion with her at this neighborhood meeting, and she and I were discussing TIFs. And I said, this is not good. Like, you take the TIFs down at Old Town, and they have all of these needs for additional police. Well, we're paying the difference.
Right.
Because those are TIFs down there. And she said, well, I'm not really for TIFs either. Now, that kind of shocked me a little bit, because I thought there's no bureaucrat that wouldn't push for a TIF. But, you know, honestly, the legislature has a lot to do with TIFs. They're the ones that pass the rules, and those rules need to be amended.
Right.
And I don't know exactly what they need in the way of an amendment, but if you have a project that becomes a very expensive thing for operations, like police especially, like I say, Old Town, the bars and all that, they build these TIFs, and then the police have to go take care of business down there, and that means that we have to pick up the tab.
So what we have here basically is money that should flow into the treasury for fire, police, and our schools actually flows into the developer's pocket, and we still have the problems. So the rest of the taxpayers, this is it's crony. I think it is, or it has the earmarks of being crony at least, and the star bonds. I'm troubled with those. I've heard two different city council members saying the sports complex is not costing us anything because we've got star bonds. $40 million worth of star bonds, 7.5% sales tax. 6.5% of it should go to Topeka. That's 87% of that $40 million should go to Topeka. So now we've got Goodland and we got Concordia and everyone else basically paying for a sports complex. And someone with the Commerce Department was telling me the other day, it is just amazing the number of these projects that are just popping up everywhere. So we've got the Supreme Court that's pushing our legislature to fund education, and meanwhile we've got the bucket that's got a hole in it because we've got money, star bonds type money running out the bottom of it that actually should be used to pay for education. So legislators in the room basically, maybe this might be something that we all would want to work on, because I think there's a real need to relook at the star bonds. Anyway, any other comments?
Yeah, I don't know if it was essential and all that. I read this last week, there are two of the small cities in Johnson County that are trying to do economic development for each of their own cities, and it's the same thing. It's just like Overland Park wants it and Shawnee Mission wants it, and they're both going after the same sources.
Well, isn't it a convenient tool? It's a legislative tool to be able to come up with a project and let sales tax be diverted and let the taxpayers of the state pay for your sports complex or your A, B, and C. Nice collective way and city councils love it because it's a tool. And do they use it? Absolutely, they use it, basically. Leave you with my final thought. The role of government in economic development. The role of government in economic development should be limited to that of providing the framework necessary for equally protecting the rights and property of all citizens through the rule of law, and not by acting as a participant in any activity that places it in a position of granting a competitive advantage to one group of citizens to the exclusion of all others. That's a powerful statement, in my opinion. Naturally, I made it. So when government... When government becomes an active participant in economic activity, it abdicates its proper role of providing the legal framework and the physical security that is essential for natural, coercive, free trade to flourish. That's free market, basically. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here.